L'esclave qui n'est pas capable d'assumer sa révolte ne mérite pas que l'on s'apitoie sur son sort.
When you hear the word revolutionist, who or what comes to mind? Che Guevara, Napoleon, Gaddafi, or maybe Thomas Sankara? Well, today we'll be talking about a new-gen revolutionist. His name is Ibrahim Traore, and he is the President of Burkina Faso, a Western African country. On September 30th, 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traore led a military coup in Burkina Faso, overthrowing the government of Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Let us go back in time for a second to understand how and why this happened. Ibrahim Traore was born in 1988 in Bondoukoui, Burkina Faso. He completed his primary education in Bondoukoui, the city where he was born. He then attended high school in Bobo-Dioulasso. His high school friends and teachers said that he was very quiet, talented, and hardworking. After graduating from high school, he studied geology at a university belonging to the Muslim Students Association. He graduated with honors. His dream was to become a soldier. In 2010, he joined the Burkina Faso army. He was a successful soldier. That's why his rank was rising rapidly. He traveled to Morocco for anti-aircraft training. Then he joined an infantry unit in the town of Kaya in northern Burkina Faso. By 2014, he had been promoted to a warrant officer. Later, he joined MINUSMA, the United Nations peacekeeping force. Thus, he started to serve as a peacekeeper in the Mali War. In 2018, a major rebellion broke out. Traore was one of the soldiers assigned to prevent attacks by the rebels. He was decorated as a soldier who showed great courage in the events that erupted. He then returned to Burkina Faso. A jihadist insurgency had started in his country. He also took part in the operation against the insurgency. Within 10 years, he achieved the rank of captain. In 2019, he joined the Cobra Special Forces Unit, a special unit established to fight terrorism. He was active in the Otopuano attack in 2019 and in the fight against other insurgencies in the north of Burkina Faso. He was also active in Burkina Faso against terrorist groups such as Daesh. During the jihadist uprising, he was one of the many young officers who fought on the front lines against the rebels. The people of Burkina Faso were dissatisfied with the government of then-President Christian Kabore. Poverty in the country was deepening day by day. This was causing social unrest. In addition, one of the things that made the people uneasy was the fact that Kabore was an ally of France. During his term, violence had erupted, and Burkina Faso's army had suffered great losses. Against this backdrop, a military coup took place in Burkina Faso in January 2022, and Lieutenant Colonel Damina took over the country. Traore also took part in this military coup. He was part of the group of army officers who brought the military junta of the Patriotic Movement for Protection and Restoration to power. He was also active in this team. In Kaya, a town in the north of Burkina Faso, he served as the head of a military unit, both in the Cobra's Special Forces team and in an artillery unit. Damina said he would restore social peace. But for 9 months after the coup, violence in Burkina Faso escalated. 40% of the country fell under the control of terrorist organizations. Supporters of the military coup felt that Damiba had failed to quell the jihadist insurgency. Traore was among them. The greatest dissatisfaction with Damiba was felt among the young officers fighting against the rebels on the front line. There were also delays in the payment of salaries to the Cobra Corps. This was one of the factors that made the officers change. He and other officers launched an operation to persuade Damiba to refocus on the rebellion. But eventually, he began to feel that Damiba's ambitions were getting in the way of what they had set out to do. So Traore decided to overthrow Damiba. This meant a new military coup. On September 30th, 2022, a military coup took place. Traore was still a soldier with the rank of captain when he launched the coup. The coup took place with the support of the Cobra Corps. With the coup, the world heard his name for the first time. After the coup, Traore proclaimed himself as the new president of the Movement of the Strongmen for Protection and Restoration. By October 6th, he announced his interim presidency as head of state of Burkina Faso and supreme head of the Burkina Faso Armed Forces. He was now the leader of Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore took office as head of state at the age of 34. He made history as the youngest active head of state in the world. In his statement after becoming head of state, he promised democratic elections for July 2024. Traore's first focus was to end Western, especially French colonization in the country. The uprisings in Africa had weakened the influence of the US and France in the region. The anti-colonial uprisings in Africa, which had grown massive in recent years, were making Western hegemony in the region increasingly difficult. In February 2023, he expelled French forces from Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso wanted to diversify and strengthen its international partnerships. The coup in Burkina Faso in 2020, 2 years after the coup in Mali, was also expected to take place in Burkina Faso. And the coup d'etat in Niger that followed led to a drastic reduction in French and US commercial activity in Africa. Traore led the anti-colonialism that was emerging in Africa. In fact, his recent stance against European imperialism, he came to the fore with his anti-US and anti-French rhetoric. In his statements, he often emphasized the fight against France and independence. Most recently, the eyes of the world turned to Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore when he announced a ban on uranium exports to France and the United States. Then came a move from Niger. Niger announced a ban on uranium exports to France. Burkina Faso and Niger would no longer export uranium to the US and France. Traore said in his speech, "And why do African leaders travel the world begging?" The era of African slavery to Western regimes was over, and the fight for full independence had begun. In the period following this decision, Traore's popularity grew by leaps and bounds. He became the voice of the struggle against imperialism in Africa. The uranium decision was followed by other moves. He also began to fight against the plunder of nature in Africa by foreign companies. He expelled a Canadian company exploring for gold from his country on the grounds of colonialism. He also confiscated 200 gold mined. With this action, he showed his determination in his words in practice. With the decline of France's power in the region, the door to a new balance of power in the region was opened. Burkina Faso will undoubtedly need the support of a big country in its fight against the US and France. Which country would never miss such an opportunity against the West? The answer is simple, Russia. Russia immediately turned this crisis in Africa into an opportunity and started to accelerate its relations with African countries. The Ghanaian government had claimed that Traore was linked to Wagner, Russia's mercenary group, and that they started working together after the coup. Traore, on the other hand, denied this claim and said that our Wagner are volunteers for the defense of the homeland. In addition to all these, after the Russia-Africa summit held on July 29, 2023, Traore said that he supported Russia. He also decided to reopen the Russian embassy, which was closed in 1992. At the Russia-Africa summit, Ibrahim Traore met with Putin. During the meeting, Traore asked Russia for support to build a nuclear power plant. He wanted this both to meet his country's energy needs and to sell electricity to neighboring countries. The electricity would be produced from uranium. "We have a serious need for energy. I care a lot about energy. We need a nuclear power plant to generate electricity in Burkina Faso. Our location is very strategic. We are located in the heart of West Africa," he explained. Traore made a press statement after the meeting that there is a serious desire to turn our backs on our traditional allies and turn to partners like Russia, which has supported us from the post-colonial era until today. If Traore succeeds in nuclear energy, it could become a very rich and powerful state. President Traore has been said by most to be the second coming of the late President Thomas Sankara, who was also a revolutionist who brought about great change in Burkina Faso in the 80s. He was assassinated before he could complete his mission, ironically, in a coup. We can only hope fate has something better in store for President Traore. A slave who cannot assume his own revolt does not deserve to be pitied. We do not feel sorry for ourselves. We do not ask anyone to feel sorry for us. He called on Africans to take up the fight against imperialism and poverty.